the right-wing commentary now is that Democrats are all pedophiles. They want to mutilate the genitalia of children. They're a threat. They're let brown people come and invade your home. That kind of communication, which has put us on the precipice of a collapsed democracy, can't be reasoned against. It's like the Terminator. You only have force to meet force, rhetorical force to meet force in that situation, and that's what my work is about.
This week, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are set to go head-to-head in their first debate of the presidential election campaign. Rachel Bitecofer is known as the election whisperer. She's a political scientist and election forecaster turned political strategist. She's also the author of Hit 'em Where It Hurts, How to Save Democracy by Beating Republicans at Their Own Game. Rachel, welcome to Times Radio.
Well, thanks for having me.
Look, a great pleasure. Let's talk about the debate. The last debate was a disaster for Joe Biden. How do you see this one playing out for Kamala Harris instead?
Yeah, it's important. As a political scientist, we teach, campaigns and conventions and presidential elections. One of the things that we teach is how, because of partisanship, because of the unique two-party system America has, debates, presidential general election debates especially, seem to have very minimal effects, right? But forever, we'll have to asterisk that for the 2024 debate with Joe Biden, because of course, that will be the most consequential debate in history. This should be a little bit more typical, given we're in a very atypical situation with the nomination switch just a month ago, right? I expect we'll see pretty good viewership, where the first debate had terrible viewership. It was about 25 million lower than what it would normally be. So I think we're going to see a lot of people engage in this, especially because one of the candidates is a known unknown now. But, generally speaking, what we should expect is not to see too much of the fundamentals of the race altered by a debate.
How much does it matter, altogether? You hinted not much, but Obama was judged to have not won his first debate against Mitt Romney. It was judged that Romney had sort of wiped the floor with him, and then he went on to glory. So, do these things matter as much as people say?
Yeah, if you're just being objective, you look at the three debates from 2016 with Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, and there was some stagecraft that you could argue Trump won, right? But the actual debates, he really struggled against Clinton, who was, able to articulate much more clearly a vision and policies. Trump has a tendency, as he says, to go off on 8 different tangents and come back, right? So, and yet, we know who won that election as well, right? So when we talk about minimal debate effects in political science, we're talking about across the board because of partisanship in U.S. elections, and that's why I'm the famous election whisperer. Most of the uncertainty is explained by just that partisan alliance, and therefore what it really means is that most people watching the debate, even the independents, have a preconceived takeaway before the debate, and they're going to see what they want to see from the debate, if that makes sense.
Makes a perfect sense. Explain the significance of the hot mic in this coming debate, because in my understanding, Republicans don't want a hot mic because they want their guy to speak less, whereas Democrats do want a hot mic because they want people to hear more from Trump, because they reckon the more people hear from him, the worse it sounds for him. That's a pretty weird dynamic.
Yeah, I think it's especially the reason the strategic difference is that, Trump just recently did an interview at a public event with the Association of Black Journalists that went bad. Okay. And it seemed to start bad just from the premise that he was being interviewed and questioned by a female Black journalist, right?
I remember him saying a lot of journalists in this room are Black, which was not a good start.
It was a rough start, dude. And what we're looking at, or what the Harris team would be looking at here is, Trump's going to be walking into that situation. Kamala Harris is in fact a Black female, right? And they seem to get under his skin, right off the bat. So I think the impetus for a hot mic, especially because they didn't have that in the first debate, and Trump's debate performance was pretty bad, especially if you were going to fact check it. But Biden's was so astronomically bad. It dwarfed all the coverage, right? But one of the things that served Trump was having the mic turn off between, so that he couldn't just interrupt and do the things that Trump does, right? If you want to see Trump in his full, in the wild, then a hot mic would be ideal.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that a normal candidate could just be told, "Don't talk when the other person's talking," and then you get that advantage all by yourself. That doesn't seem to work for him. Look, you've argued that Democrats should lean into being Democrats and abandon the preference of some activists to nominate sort of unobtrusive, more moderate blue dogs. Is that what's happened with Kamala Harris? Would you say?
Yeah, to be clear, that is not my argument, and that is a very different argument than the argument I make. So I just want to be very clear about that. What I do tell Democrats to lean in on being Democrats, as I've discussed a few times here, the power of partisanship. Partisanship to a political scientist like me explains 90% of the variance of vote choice for the electorate. I mean, that's insane. That's a big amount, right? So when I say that Democrats should lean in, what I'm talking about is party branding. The Republican communication strategy for the last decade has really been about brand, breaking the brand allegiance of white working class and now color, everybody of working class, by napalming the Democratic brand, branding us as socialist. And this may sound really insane to an audience, international audience, but generally speaking, like the right wing commentary now is that Democrats are all pedophiles. They want to mutilate the genitalia of children. They're a threat. They're let brown people come and invade your home. That kind of communication, which has put us on the precipice of a collapsed democracy, can't be reasoned against. It's like the Terminator. You only have force to meet force, rhetorical force to meet force in that situation, and that's what my work is about.
Okay, but I mean, you're the idea that Democrats should lean in. Basically, you want them to fight dirtier. You want them to target Republicans in the same way that Republicans target them. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's not dirty, right? What I am asking them to do is tell the truth, and where Republicans have to make things up, right? I mean, no Democrat is a supporter of pedophilia. No Democrat wants to mutilate children's genitals, right? I'm not asking people to lie. What I'm asking people to do is to understand that in this country, which is very different than your country, 50% of the people you walk by at the mall or in a football stadium or wherever it may be do not even bother to vote. And the reason they do not bother to vote is they don't think it matters. And we have to do a better job of making sure people understand a government for the people, by the people, requires buy-in by the people. And therefore, right now we're in a wildfire situation this fall where if Trump wins, they have a plan, Project 2025. They're going to collapse potentially the entire NATO alliance system. So the stakes are very, very high, but the work will continue after this fall if we get the chance to do it. And part of that work is about getting Democrats to understand in a tuned out public, you have to be an information disseminator.
To be totally clear here, you're basically saying it's not enough for Democrats to go, look, we're fine, upstanding people. We will run this country well. Vote for us. They've also got to say these other guys are a problem, and this is why they're a problem. Got to really, really hit hard and basically demonize the Republican brand in the same way that the Republicans have demonized the Democrat brand. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yes, that is fair. Yeah. And right now in polling data, what you see in American polling, because our electorate, I mean, even in half that votes, the electorate is very poorly informed. They don't have an interest in politics. They don't watch the news. Very few people in America watch the news every day, like real news, right? So it behooves us to bring them up to speed. Right now, there will be millions of people who will walk into ballot booths in America in these swing states, and they will be voting for Republican candidates based off of what they understand about Republicans, which is low, good on the economy, okay, and good on national defense. Neither of those things are applicable and haven't really could argue for 20 years, but certainly Donald Trump's platform with what he wants to do to NATO and the 80-year global order that we've set up to maintain peace in the West, that is not good on national security, right? And why don't voters update their priors? Well, they don't know. And so our job then becomes an information campaign rather than trying to persuade people on policies like, detailed this is that. Well, my child care plan is better, right? They don't have a child care plan. So of course yours is better just by the nature of it existing. Instead, what we need to be doing is making sure swing voters in particular are aware of what is happening in the Republican Party and why it poses such a substantial threat to their own health, wealth, freedom, and safety.
Does that involve trying to frighten people? Because we had here during the Brexit referendum here, there was a technique that became known as Project Fear, which people got very dismissive of. And the argument was often made, no, you should be presenting a positive message rather than trying to frighten people by how horrifying your opponents are. But you're basically saying, no, lean in hard to Project Fear, especially when there's something to be frightened of.
Yeah, what I'm telling you is that if I was there and I was your chief strategist, there would be no Brexit because it would have failed.
Gosh, I wonder if I'm allowed to say on the radio what I think about that. Who knows? We'll find out. Look, what do you make of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's message then? Because their message is quite positive. It is quite sort of hopey, optimism-y. Do you think they should be just getting harder, getting nastier?
No, I mean, we're really talking about a very singular situation, unheard of situation. And because it was the switch and because there was this pent up demand for something new, all that shiny new joy stuff is a huge asset for us. But don't think for a second that the Harris campaign has neglected the threat and fear and loss aversion strategy. Their comms are very much focused on that. The swing state ads are very focused on bringing the electorate up to speed on Project 2025 and what that means for them, right? So, it's very good. You want joy, you want enthusiasm, you want your coalition, especially the people who think they can beat Brexit with hope and positivity. You want them all happy, and now we have them happy. But no, that would never be enough. And we'll see that in the Senate map here in the US. The Senate is going to be the hardest lift for Democrats, and it will come down to those races that decide to bring their electorate up to speed on how extreme the Republican opponent in those races are. And the ones that choose not to, the ones that run what you described for Brexit, will probably lose their races.
Right. Okay. Look, in July 2019, you predicted that Trump would lose that he would lose that election. What are you predicting now? How do you see the election panning out?
Yeah, so a month ago, it'd be a totally different situation. A month ago, I was seriously Googling, how do you go abroad? Where am I going to live? I've never even put my art I never even put art in my house because I moved in 21. I'm maybe I'm going to be moving again, right? So when we talk about the difference, to be in this situation, it's not going to sound very reassuring to your audience, but for us, it's hugely reassuring. For months, the race was a toss-up advantage Trump, okay? And now that stasis has shifted. It was going to switch immediately from that switch. And now we've really seen that borne out in the data where it's toss-up advantage Harris. And that's where it has to be to have any hope of winning, right? But I do think the Democrats are positioned well, right? But the narrative about this election is too close to call. And I think that that's a wise approach because so much of it does hinge on the strategic execution that we get from Democrats.
Okay. And look, before I let you go, to sort of swoop back in on the debate, would you then like to see Kamala Harris just really taking the fight to Donald Trump, really, really attacking him? Is there not a danger that might put people off, make people, use that terrible word people only use about women, say she looks strident or bossy or something like that, and just sort of make sort of swing voters think, you know what, this woman's as nasty as the other guy. I'm not appealed. Or is that precisely the kind of the moderation she needs to resist?
No, you do it in content and not in demeanor, though. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right. So, what I tell people all the time, especially caricature clients that I'm trying to get on to negative partisanship strategy, which people should read the book if they want to understand, is that there's many, many ways to deliver a negative partisanship message. You can do what I call bless your heart negative partisanship. And that's what I kind of expect to see out of Kamala, where she's going to look tough but charming, right? Try to be charming. And here's what she needs to do. I mean, he's going to stand on stage and he's going to tell everybody everything was great when he was perfect when he was president. There was no problems at all. Right. He's going to be very if you look at the first debate, making wild claims that have no basis in reality. Right. And some of the people who worked on your Brexit would say, well, Kamala's got to lay out her policy. Nobody knows what her policies are. Right. And I would say, no, what Kamala needs to do is make sure she name drops as many times as she can Project 2025, the national abortion ban that Trump is definitely going to sign no matter what he says. Right. And make sure that the electorate hears about Trump's policies because he has proposed insane radicalism for this country, eliminating federal oversight of the entire K through 12 education system so that they can go and create Trump camps. Okay. They want to get rid of the entire income tax. And I kid you not, institute Smoot-Hawley. They want to put in a tariff system to fund the government entirely off of tariffs, right? Like, it's insane, right? So I think if you accept what I'm arguing, and you should, because it's a fact. Okay, it's a fact that most Americans have no idea what is happening right now. Then you really want to use that 90 minutes where you have 50 million people to make sure they hear about what is coming to them under a Republican administration.
Rachel Bitecofer, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.